Hello knitters, Barbara Benson here. I am an independent knitwear designer who also likes to make videos here on my YouTube channel, Watch Barbara Knit. Make sure to check in the description notes below the video where you will find links to all of my online shenanigans, including how to get my patterns to knit for yourself, how to join the Watch Barbara Knit Facebook group, how to support me on Patreon, and where to get Watch Barbara Knit merchandise. Today I am making a fairly fast video that just I hadn't planned this one at all. It had never occurred to me. It is literally because of a comment that one of you lovely viewers left on another video. And it made me realize that maybe there's something that newer knitters haven't been told or don't realize, or maybe not even newer knitters, but people just don't realize for certain reasons. Maybe they're not comfortable in changing. But here is the comment that sparked the idea for this video. So it is someone commented on my Longtail Caston tutorial video. I will link that in the description notes below. It says, "Thank you so much for making this video. I wanted to knit a heart-shaped coaster, but the video I was watching for it was using the Longtail Caston, and I didn't know how to do that until watching your video. So thank you so much for making this video. It's really good to help me complete the project I am working on," which... thank you so much for leaving such a kind comment, sleepyhead Rhea. Those kind of things really make me, especially when it's on an older video, makes me feel good that I've created content that's sort of evergreen and that's something that people will continue to get use out of. And as I commented here, that it is a very common cast on and a great one to have in your repertoire, but I want to encourage you to not let not knowing a cast on prevent you from knitting a pattern. With some exceptions, you can frequently substitute in another cast on. And that is what I wanted to elaborate on in this video. To give everyone who might be considering it or who might be running into this, I don't know this particular, I'm going to do something over here. Don't let not knowing a cast on prevent you from knitting a project that you want to knit. And I'm going to go in more detail, but first I really want to mention something, because what I'm going to talk about here is a couple different cast-ons and things you need to think about. And I know from experience that there will be people who come across this video and will comment something along the lines of, "A demonstration would have been nice. A visual aid would have been nice. Show it to me. I don't understand when you just explain it to me." And if you're one of those people that don't understand something, if it's not a visual aid, if you're not visually looking at it, then I'm just going to save you some time and let you know that this video probably isn't for you, because there aren't going to be any visual aids or demonstrations in this video. This is a talking video. This is me trying to encourage people and give people information. It's an informational video and not a demonstration video. I know that there are people who are visual learners, and that's why I make videos that are instructional like that, but I wanted this video to get out so that hopefully the people who need to hear this can hear it as quickly as possible. And doing a demonstration video that has multiple examples of multiple different cast-ons would take me about a month to get ready, because I have to do the swatching and the demonstration and everything's in my spare time, and I don't have a lot of spare time. So that being said, if you want to see a demo, if you're looking for visual aids, this is not the video for you. I'm sure you can find some amazing other stuff on the internet. One thing I'm going to do have sort of visual aid is I'm going to refer to this book. This is one of my favorite knitting books. There are no patterns in it. It is just a technique book, and it is one of the best books. See, look at this. 211 ways to begin and end your knitting. It has extensive illustrations. If you are interested in casting on and binding off, this book is an invaluable addition. I don't get any kickbacks. I will put a link in the description note below, and I'll use like my Amazon affiliate thing so that like I might get 6 cents. Maybe 25 cents if you decide to click through and order it, but that's not necessary. What if you could find a yarn store, a local yarn store that has this on their shelf, that would be the best bet, because then we're also supporting a local yarn store. So, okay, you can substitute back cast-ons. That is the too long, didn't read. You can substitute cast-ons most of the time. What I want to talk to you about is substituting in an intelligent way. You need to have an understanding of what functionality the cast-on has. Like if it's a provisional cast-on. A provisional cast-on is one where you use any number of techniques to create a situation where you are typically using a waste yarn for part of your cast-on so that you can have that cast-on knit and then come back and pick up the stitches at the top of that provisional cast-on, remove the waste yarn, and have live stitches to work in the opposite direction, okay? So, but if you don't want to do a provisional cast-on, you can always do like a normal cast-on or a provisional not provisional, a fairly insubstantial cast-on. And then when you get to the point where they're like, pick it up and go the other direction, you can just pick up stitches. Now, you will have a seam. You will have a visible seam, but if your cost benefit analysis is I don't want to do a provisional cast on and I'm perfectly fine with a visible seam, then don't let the provisional cast on keep you from knitting that project. Does it make sense? You can pick up the stitches. You can do a number of things to work around that provisional cast on. Now, I did say, and you heard me say, a fairly insubstantial cast on, because you want that cast on to kind of disappear. And what you might want to consider thinking about is thinking of cast-ons on like an XY axis. That's the way my brain works. Go back to many of my videos. We have these XY axes. And so there are like two different things that I primarily think of when I'm thinking about cast-ons. One is it a substantial cast-on or an insubstantial cast-on? And there's like, again, a range of these. And what I mean by insubstantial is that it is a cast-on that is specifically designed to kind of disappear into the fabric, that it's not particularly visible, it's not particularly stable, it just kind of goes away. Frequently these types of cast-ons might be used if you're starting lace and you want that lace to just pop out of nowhere, so you're going to have something that doesn't really look like anything. These are typically looser cast-ons, and again, it's something that you don't want it visible. On the other end, there are substantial cast-ons that are like physically more visible. They're usually more stable, and they bring that stability to the party. And a lot of times you want that stability if you're working from it and it needs to anchor something and have like a lot of tension on it. I used the Twisted German cast-on, which is a variant on the Longtail Caston, for the base of a lot of my crescent shaped shawls at the back of the neck, because I'm casting on 7 stitches and then it flares fairly aggressively, and when I block it very aggressively. So I wanted a substantial cast on that could take the stress of putting that whole shawl on 7 stitches and blocking it really assertively. If I had used an insubstantial cast on, then when I tried to do that block, it would kind of like not support it and like kind of blow out. And speaking of top-down shawls, here's another cast-on thing. Garter tabs. Don't let a garter tab prevent you from knitting a shawl that you want to knit, because they can be fiddly and they can be fussy. And if you don't really understand them, what they are is you're casting on a little rectangle, like only 2 stitches wide and like 12 rows long, right? And then you go along the edge and you pick up the 2 stitches, and then you pick up a stitch per row. So that's going to be 12 stitches. And then you pick up another 2 stitches at the end. So in total, you'd have 12, 13, 14, 15. You'd have 16 stitches on your needle in that example. And the purpose of this is so that you can maintain a garter edge if you have a garter selvage along the top. So it's uninterrupted. If you don't particularly care about the visual appeal of that 2 inches that is going to be at the back of your neck, if you're wearing it a traditional shawl in a traditional way, and you don't want to fuss with a garter tab, you don't have to. You could just cast on 14 stitches. You could just cast on whatever number of stitches the pattern calls for. Typically 14's a lot. That was a big example. A lot of times it's only like when you end the garter tab process, you've picked up 8 stitches. I'm just going to cast on 8 stitches, and it's going to have a little dip in it, and I'm not going to care because it's not a particular concern of my aesthetic. Now, I'm not like criticizing anyone who that is important to them, because that is a really finesse detail that is a really nice touch. And if you love garter tabs, you go for garter tabs. But don't let a garter tab prevent you from knitting a shawl that you want to knit. Garter tab is also a very stable cast on. Just in the substantial, insubstantial, it's going to be really, really stable. The other axis that I think about is it is a stretchy or an unyielding cast on. Okay, again, it's a spectrum. Is it a cast on that's designed to be stretchy so that it serves a purpose, or is it a cast on that's supposed to be super, super stable that isn't going to flex when you pull on it? The easiest way to describe a inflexible cast on is actually to refer to a bind off. You know, when you do the standard leapfrog bind off and it just doesn't move anywhere, that's a totally unyielding cast bind off, which these kind of considerations go for both cast ons and binds off. So if you're going to substitute a cast on, you need to know if that cast on that the designer chose, that the pattern writer chose, needs to be really stretchy. Okay? Does this need to be really stretchy? Because if it does need to be a particularly stretchy cast on, then you would need to substitute another stretchy cast on. You would not want to substitute a really unyielding cast on, because that might cause problems for you. Examples are cast ons that are specifically designed to work with ribbing so that they'll expand and contract with a cuff or a hat brim or a sock cuff or something like that. So again, knowing what you want out of your cast on is important for substituting. Only if it's like really integral to the pattern, and knowing how to, and evaluating the pattern and figuring out how important is this cast on to this pattern is something that just takes time. And just look at it and see, okay, what's going on? They're telling me to use the Longtail Caston. In the example of the person who asked the question, it was a coaster. I doubt that it particularly needed to be stretchy. The Longtail Caston is a nice stretchy cast on. It has a nice level of stability. So we're looking for something relatively stable and relatively stretchy. I probably would not have done a Longtail Caston because I do not care for the Longtail Caston. It's not one of my personal favorites. I don't like estimating the tail. It drives me bonkers. So I probably would have substituted the cable cast on, which I do have a video on and I will link to in the description below. I will also link to the Longtail Caston video. I would say that a very large percentage, I would hesitate to even say the majority of patterns that I look at have a Longtail Caston. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that it's just because it's the most common cast on that people know how to do. It is the most common cast on that people are taught. It is just really, really popular. It's like everybody likes the Longtail Caston. Everybody knows the Longtail Caston, so they just use the Longtail Caston. Probably without, it's just your default. I mean, you're not even really thinking about it. It's a nice mid-range cast on. It's stretchy, but it's stable. It looks nice, yada, yada, yada. Most people know how to use it. So that is one that you're going to come across a lot. But as I said, if you don't like it, you don't have to use it. And evaluating and deciding if it's going to impact the end result, or if it is going to impact the end result, how significantly, and if you care. Because you don't have to care. Then you get into some of the more complex cast-ons. There's really popular tubular cast-ons. And do not get me wrong, they are gorgeous. You create a beautiful bottom for a ribbed something, and for people who are into the incredible finesse, beautiful details of garments, they are just amazing. But if you don't want to do a tubular cast on, and it would prevent you from knitting the thing and having the thing that you want, use a different cast on. That's the point of this video, okay? The point of this video is, you're the boss. You're the boss of your knitting. You're the boss of your knitting. You're in charge. Very rarely will substituting a different cast on make your project explode. It's just not gonna happen. I do not, as I said, care for the Longtail Caston. It's not one of my favorites. I substitute the cable Caston, but worked loosely most of the time that the Longtail Caston is called for, because I don't like estimating the tail, especially if I'm casting on a large number of stitches, because that is when the tail cast on. I was just on Facebook and saw someone complaining that they had to cast on 400 stitches for something, and they used the Longtail Caston and they came up 40 stitches short, and they wanted to know if they could then add more stitches on. And you can, but it's going to be a different cast on, and it's going to look different. I would never use the Longtail Caston to cast on 400 stitches. If I really, really needed to, if it was integral to the pattern, I would be pulling from the outside and the inside of the yarn ball. I would not be estimating the yarn tail, or I would using 2 different balls of yarn of the same color, one to be the working yarn, one to be the tail, because it's too much. It's too much to have to do 400 stitches. Casting on in the round, I prefer the cable cast on, because the motion you make when you do the Longtail cast on puts a lot of energy into your yarn, your cast on, and it makes it spiral. It has all this energy in it that it wants let out, so it spirals, and it's harder to get it all lined up and make sure you don't have a twist. I'm not saying that cable cast on doesn't spiral. It just doesn't like corkscrew spiral quite as badly as the Longtail cast on does. So again, I thought I said I was going to show you this, and this book is amazing. I want to show you here at the bottom. You see those colors? The blue is the cast on chapter, and the red is the bind off chapter. Okay? So that tells you how many different cast-ons. There's just so many different cast-ons, and I didn't touch on decorative cast-ons, that the primary thing is how it visually looks, like this here. Like, if I think that's a bind off, but it's just like this. That is going to be something that if you substitute it out, it's going to substantially change the visual appearance, but it might not mechanically change anything. Like an I-cord cast on, it's going to look very different. But you can still substitute it if you don't really particularly care about that aesthetic. So, and here it is, just happened to open it up to the Iord Caston, and you can see how substantial that is. It's not particularly stretchy. And in this book, it says, an Iord is a narrow knitted tube that can serve many different functions. As part of a caston, it creates a neat, clean edge. This caston is worked on double pointed needles. You can make the cord bigger or smaller, blah, 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 blah. Pair it with an Icord bind off, blah, blah. So it tells you information on it. This is a cool one. See here we've got the chained caston. Looks really cool. Again, visuals. Let's see, does this give us any hints on... It's an extremely loose caston, so use needles at least 4 sizes smaller than the project needles to keep the edge neat and tidy. So this book has great recommendations in it. Those are really fancy castons. Here are multicolor castons. Again, if that looked really complicated to you and you didn't care that your caston only had one color, you don't have to do it. You don't have to do it. Nobody's going to come pin you down and be like, you did it wrong. And if they did, well, they have problems. So, how long have I been yammering? I've been yammering way too long. The purpose of this video, which I have reiterated, and I'm going to reiterate again, was to empower anyone who hasn't heard the statement, you can substitute your caston. You can do it. Don't let a caston hold you back. Now, if you really want to use that caston, applause to the original question asker who went out and found a video. But don't be in despair and don't waste too much of your knitting time trying to do something, especially if it's a major specialty caston that you're going to learn it and use it once. Most of the time you can do something a little bit different. Just be aware when you're looking at the project to really kind of think about what is needed. Why might this pattern writer have called for this weirdo caston if there's a weirdo caston? If it's just the Longtail Caston, look and see if there's anything in the pattern that indicates that it's going to explode if it doesn't have the Longtail Caston. And if it doesn't, you can use, if you want to put on the knitted caston, if you want, I don't recommend the backward loop caston for most anything. I've considered making a video called the easiest caston you'll never use or rarely use. It's not one that I recommend for much at all, but there's so many castons out there and you can learn however many you want or just use the one you like, but don't let anything stand in your way of getting that thing that you want to knit. Okay. If please let me know. As I said, this was not a demo video. This was an informational, talky type video. If there's specific things I talked about that you want to see demonstrations about, or if there are castons that you're particularly curious about, please let me know in the comments, and I can do one cast-on kind of things. It's just trying to do many for one video is really time consuming. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, click that like button, and if you would like to be notified whenever I upload a new video, please subscribe to my channel and select notifications. Thank you so much.